maybe now that we're taking a puppy break, I'll give my thoughts on Oppenheimer. So, Oppenheimer, directed by Christopher Nolan. You may know him from such films as Insomnia and The Following. And he also did some superhero films that, I don't know, no one really watched them. Something about a Batman beginning and a dark night of sorts, but nothing anyone would remember really. His big one was Insomnia. Although, I mean, to be fair, I'm kind of kidding around, but rest in peace, Robin Williams. Robin Williams was in Insomnia. But, Oppenheimer, I saw in IMAX. The IMAX format definitely suited the film well. There were a lot of really breathtaking shots, but I was surprised to find that the most breathtaking shots, the one that were like, oh yeah, like this is a real nice use of the IMAX format, were just sort of landscape shots of New Mexico. So not really like the bomb or anything crazy like that. Like it's a different reason to want to go see an IMAX format than if you went to something like Mission Impossible, right? Because like in Mission Impossible, you want to see that big action on the IMAX, whereas this, it's more like well constructed, very detailed shots, which are mostly dialogue. Now, I think the dialogue in the film is for the most part quite good. It's very well written, and I found myself quite engaged by a lot of what was going on. The performances are top notch, and I mean the film is very well directed. A lot of the shots are constructed very well. I mean, I guess I already talked about the shot construction. The music was quite good. A lot of the aspects of how the film was made were great, and I think the story is very, very compelling for about 2 hours, and the film is 3 hours, which leads me into my main issue with Oppenheimer, is that I think the last act of the film, while very compelling and interesting in its own right, it is less interesting and less compelling than the first 2/3 of the movie. So where I think this becomes a problem that I think could be solved by cutting that last hour down to a last half hour or a last 45 minutes. Like even something as tightening it up by 15, I think would have made for a more well-paced film. That said, there's a lot of story details that are pretty interesting. Like there's a bit of wheel spinning, and they do a bit of covering the same stuff from a few people's different angles who basically have the same story, with the I guess somewhat spoiler alert for though I think knowing this will help you going in, the last hour of Oppenheimer, the last hour of the film, is almost exclusively courtroom drama style stuff. I won't get into details too much, but it's basically courtroom drama for the last half of the film. Like the all of the Manhattan Project stuff happens in the first 2 hours. Now, I think that last hour was good, and I think that sometimes hearing those other testimonies from the other people that are giving similar perspectives is kind of beneficial, because you get the impression of how many people were sort of on the same page, testifying either for or against Oppenheimer in this situation. What I said to my friend when we walked out of the movie is like, I thought that was really good, but it also felt like I saw the extended edition of a movie in the theater. Whereas I think I was like, I feel like there's a theatrical cut of this movie that could make this movie more money, because you'd have more showings per day, and people I think would enjoy more. The mass market I think would have an easier time watching it if it was even cleaned up by 15 minutes. And I think a half an hour is probably more realistic, because 2.5 hours is still a good amount of time to be in a theater. You got lots of time for detail. I'm not saying you should tighten up Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer to 80 minutes or anything like that. It's like, yeah, no, it's not the type of storytelling that will work that way. But I think you could knock a half hour off that ending. And I think you could do it with like I mean, I'm not going to do it, but I think that like I could probably do it if I had the film and maybe a weekend. I could the film, just give me the theatrical cut too. Like I'm not talking like if I had all the dailies and and like every single alternate shot and coverage shot, and I want to like re-edit the film and give my like I know I'm not, I'm just talking about tightening up the pacing. Like I'm talking about going from extended edition cut to theatrical edition cut. Now, that said, I think there would be a lot of people, including myself, who would probably watch that extended cut on home video, like on Blu-ray or streaming or what have you. Hey, baby bean, she's a cute puppy. Anyways, there would be a lot of people who will watch the home video version of the extended cut, and then that I believe would probably be known as the definitive version of the film, you know, like the one that you should watch if you're going to watch Oppenheimer. Because when you're watching at home, you can pause, you can go to the washroom, you can get a snack, you know, you're not missing anything. You can kind of watch it at your own pace. And especially with the quality of television filmmaking, I think people are pretty okay with long-term storytelling if they're in a comfortable environment. But I think it's tough to do that kind of movie in a theatrical environment at that pace in the back half, like after what most people would assume is going to be the climax of the movie, which is the atomic test, right? And that it's not the climax of the movie. That's like the end of Act 2. And then Act 3 is kind of a whole different movie. I mean, it's the same movie, and a lot of they do a good job of tying in stuff from even the first act of the movie that is mostly Oppenheimer's life, like his earlier life. And I think and again, sounds like it's made for history and war fanatics like myself. And yeah, John Connor's like, and that's the thing. I think this is probably the version of the movie that you would like. But there was a lot of people that were like, oh my God, like that movie just kept going, didn't it? And I think the reason is they sort of figured that the atomic test was the end of the movie. And then it's like, well, yeah, and yeah, Classy Vigilante, actually, you and my friend Ryan, spot on. He's like, man, he's like, why don't we just do like a 15-minute intermission? The movie theaters would make a hell of a lot more money, because if you made it 15 minutes, that's more than enough time for a whole shitload of people to get more popcorn and more drinks, you know? And if you have like, by the way, if people get large popcorns and drinks, just have refills, man. Like, let them get a refill. It's fine. But the thing is, only do it on larges, because then that'll encourage people to get the biggest size. That you're still charging like $9 for 10 cents worth of popcorn, okay? Like, relax. But I mean, make it viable, to make it almost implied that if you're going to the movie theater, you buy snacks at the movie theater. And I think if you do that with intermissions, even with Hollywood movies kind of going to garbage, like for the most part, with like some notable exceptions. I mean, as much as I had issues with the script, I enjoyed Mission Impossible. I really enjoyed Oppenheimer, even though I thought that it had pacing issues in its last act. And here, what else have I seen in theaters recently that I've enjoyed? I'm trying to think. It's not that it's like I haven't seen any. It's just like I know I'm kind of blanking on a few probably. You know what it is? Because I'm just thinking about the last time I was at my local theater, which I actually enjoy, and I'm like, man, it's like The Flash is the last thing. Oh, you know, Across the Spider-Verse. I liked Across the Spider-Verse. So, I mean, like every so often there's decent stuff coming out, not at a hugely fast pace, but you know, it happens, and sometimes being able to go to the movie theater is kind of nice, man. So I would like them to still exist, but I feel like ticket sales aren't the way they're going to be able to do it. That said, I think if you go see Oppenheimer, you'll enjoy it, but be ready for the last act to be more like a very extended epilogue, okay? Like if you're kind of going for the Manhattan Project, it's the aftermath stuff that takes a long time, and while compelling and has like I think a pretty good ending, is is a little it's a lot slower than the rest of the movie, and it's a good deal less compelling, even though it is still compelling, I think. Oh yeah, Super Mario Brothers, that was another one that I saw in theaters that I enjoyed. So yeah, it's happening. There are movies. They're still making films, everybody. But yeah, I don't know about things coming up. Though, I mean, hey, I feel like I will still go to the IMAX to go see Dune, maybe even Killers of the Flower Moon, although I think that one I might just go see at my local theater, because I think KJ and Lofty want to talk about it, and that's the Scorsese movie that Brendan Fraser is in. It's kind of it looks like Gangs of New York, but for Native Americans. and you know, like, I'm on board. It looks kind of good. I'm like, yeah, okay, man, like Scorsese, let's do it. I think that one's going to be quite long as well, though, which is kind of why I'm like, hey, I'm just going to go to the theater where I'm comfortable. It's nice and close by. If it's going to be that much time, at least I can deal with it being a 10-minute commute instead of a 90-minute commute. Because, man, when I have a 90-minute commute on a 4-hour movie, like, you have any idea how much time of a day that is? Like, it's like, wow, I burned an entire work day, like almost an EMS shift's work at the time to see one film. And that's almost, I mean, it's kind of what I did for Oppenheimer. I missed the EFAP portal race. I wouldn't have won, but I would have had a lot of fun doing. Mission Impossible: The Length put me off because of my bad back. And yeah, actually, Ryan, my friend Ryan, he's got a bad back. He's my age too, and we're getting old. And he was having some issues with those seats, man. And they were a lot better than the seats that I saw Mission Impossible in. So, and I think the next time I'm going to do that theater, I'm going to go for Dune, because I think Dune might have some seriously good use of IMAX that I'm going to be like, wow, I'm really happy I saw that Sandworm in IMAX, man. Although I might go to the Scotiabank Theater, which is kind of the flagship, at least the flagship mainstream theater in Toronto. Those are my thoughts on Oppenheimer. I think it is good, but I think you should be prepared for it to gradually descend into its ending. Also, just go see it at your normal theater. The IMAX is good, but you're missing some nice shots of landscape. Like, Lofty will definitely have a different take on this than I will, but and I appreciate good cinematography, and I appreciate 70mm film. I appreciate the IMAX format, but I'm just like, man, if it's a big pain in the ass for you to get to an IMAX theater, I think most of the good aspects of this movie would still come across without the IMAX format. I guess if that makes sense.